Judge Michelle Verricchio has been instrumental in putting this ceremony together. She has a real appreciation for this building and the history it holds. It is my pleasure to ask her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Judge Verricchio.
All right, thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Please remain standing for the Star-Spangled Banner. Angela Dries is a recent graduate of Catasauqua High School and already has a very impressive singing and acting resume. She's the winner of 2 Freddie Awards, one for actress in a leading role and one for outstanding small ensemble performance. She also happens to be the daughter of our own longtime court employee and former court operations officer, Tony Dries. She will be singing the national anthem for us. Please welcome Angelina Dries.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Angelina. Pretty great. Let's hear it for the Honor Guard. We sincerely thank the Honor Guard for being part of this ceremony. Thank you.
Heated. Whip. Face. Forward.
Thank you. Please be seated. If I ever had the urge to salute, that was it. We're going to take a brief pause and let anybody else that was coming up the elevator come on in. Come on. Come on. Come on. You want to come on in and sit down? Yeah, just right through here, ma'am. Right through here.
Thank you.
Sure. And anywhere up there. Okay?
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. All right. This building used to be called the old Lehigh County Courthouse. And with this dedication, we rechristen it the historic Lehigh County Courthouse. We are very excited and proud to present this dedication ceremony, and we are marking the renovation and the historic preservation of this building. But this is not just the dedication of a building. It's a recognition of the importance of our history and a celebration of our community being governed by the rule of law and the freedom of a people to govern themselves. The magnificence of courtrooms like this one and 1B behind this one were created to convey a sense of sacredness for the legal process and the administration of justice, and for all of that to be for the people of the community, the people that come before the court to resolve disputes. This courthouse is a hidden gem to most people. We have many hidden gems in Lehigh County. Another one is the Allentown Band. Did you know that the Allentown Band began in 1828 and, wait for it, is the oldest community band in the United States? We are fortunate to have 9 of the band's members with us. If we had the entire band, there wouldn't be room for the rest of us. And we are thrilled that they're here and participating in this ceremony with us. I'm proud to represent my fellow judges and acknowledge their presence here today. Judges Robert Steinberg, James Anthony, Michelle Verricchio. I'm looking at it as if I need notes for this. I mean, I know. Douglas Reichley, Melissa Pavlik, Christy Marks, Thomas Caffrey. Thomas Capehart couldn't be with us today. Zachary Cohen, Carol McGinley, Kelly Bannock couldn't be with us today. And we are so thrilled that we have so many dignitaries present, and we're honored that you're here. We thank you for giving of your time to be here. We know that's not easily done, Friday at 4:30, but we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Out of concern for your time, we will dispense with acknowledging each and every dignitary. However, I cannot continue without recognizing Superior Court Judge Victor Stabile and my good friend Pennsylvania Superior Court President Judge Jack Piniella. And we also recognize the presence of Pennsylvania Court Administrator Andrea Tuominen. Thank you for being here. And it's quite kind of a noteworthy time in our life where both of the president judges from the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court are from the Lehigh Valley right now. Pretty cool. All right. Now, we're okay here? Okay, we have a few more people let in. We only have the one elevator, as you know, and the way the building is, we couldn't figure out a way to put it in the front, so that's why we have this arrangement. So anybody that needed the elevator, let them come up. You can imagine those stairways with a lot of activity back in the day, people up and down there. Ma'am, you want to come on right up and through here? Okay. All right, thanks for coming. Oop. Now we're going to move into a little bit of the history lesson. I call it the history lesson or history presentation on this. And we're very honored to have the Lehigh Valley Heritage Museum with us, the Executive Director, Joseph Guerrera, and the Assistant Director, Chief Curator, and Director of Library and Archives, Jill Youngkin. They're going to provide us with a brief history presentation on the building and the history around it.
Well, thank you. And if we wanted a history lesson, we should have probably called on Phil Armstrong. He's a retired social studies teacher, and he knows more about history than probably all of us put together. And whenever I go out and see Phil, I usually defer to him to do the history talk. But I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here. And I would like to start out by thanking Mr. Rick Mulchaney. You know, Rick Mulchaney's not with us today. Rick is not well. Rick was the driving force behind this happening. I want to thank the county officials that were really behind. This was really an enormous project. This is one of the jewels not only of the Lehigh Valley, but of the whole Commonwealth. And this is really an important courthouse. And to have this in the condition that it's in today is really an incredible feat. And Rick, you may not be with us, brother, but we're thinking about you, and we're wishing you the very best. I guess I would start out by saying that this building, from an architectural point of view, is known as Italianate style. Now, for anybody that wants a history lesson, we have an outline that you can follow later on. But what I like to talk about is the human condition. I mean, about all the lives that were affected and impacted because of this incredible building. And I want to think about all the thousands of people that drive by here every day. I walk past this courthouse 3 or 4 times a day. I'm one of these guys that takes a walk at night, and I always look over at this place and think of the hundreds of years of history. And I want to say that this building is really a cornerstone to the restored beauty of Allentown. And Allentown is really on the way up, and this place is just one of the capstones, and we should be so proud of that. But this building, when I think of the human condition here and all the things that this building has done for people. You know, people walk in here and they're broken and they have problems. In this building, hundreds of thousands of people in the last 200 years have had their lives restored, and they've had their lives healed and put back together with juries and judges and the rule of law. And that's a really big deal. That doesn't happen everywhere around the world. You know, we Americans take everything for granted. But you want to know what also really impresses me? And that is the night. I want you to make believe right now it's the night of April 8th, 1870. And one of the greatest figures in American history walked down that aisle right there. I want you to think about this room as you see it now. Well, it would have looked completely different. There would have been 500 or 600 people. They didn't have fire laws and fire marshals back then. People would have been smoking cigars and pipes and cigarettes. The room would have been filled with smoke. April 8th, 1870, Frederick Douglass walked down that aisle to deliver a great oration, one of the greatest figures in American history. They were so right to call this the historic courthouse. And the oration he delivered that night was called Our Composite Nationality. Now, for those of you who don't know Douglass, we have an exhibit in the other courtroom. The first 10 people that get there, we have a free booklet on Douglass's history and some of his work. That's right. We want you to get over there. But so what he came here to talk about, he was talking about the treatment of the Chinese. Remember, the title of it was Our Composite Nationality. He was talking about immigration. He was pro-immigration. There were 2.5 million Chinese that came here to work on the Central Pacific Railroad, and they were treated poorly, and Douglass felt that was wrong, and he was traveling around the country, and he came here for that great oration. That really makes this building historic. That in itself does. And later on, in a minute or two, we're going to be unveiling a portrait of him and one of his good friends, Abraham Lincoln, because these are the people that inspire us. You know, we should be inspired. I'm inspired by the Roberto Clemente Charter School every time I think of Roberto Clemente. You know, people today need mentors, and they need people to inspire them to be all that they can be. And that's what I get from Douglass. He was a civic-minded man. He would encourage us to think about respect and reconciliation and to get along with each other. And I would say that Frederick Douglass was the moral conscience of America. And the fact that he stood here, can you imagine him walking down here now? That's how you like to do it. The whole room would have been packed, and they would have brought him. No one would have seen him till the end. And as just before the oration, they would bring him in, and it was the audience would go wild. It was like a rock star. That's Frederick Douglass. Think of him. So this building speaks to us. It always will. It holds our imagination. It's a connection to the past when you think of the 200 and some years that it's been here. And so what I would like to do, and by the way, you know, the Historical Society used to work out of here. And I think, and that's hard to believe. Now, I've only been with the Historical Society for about 18 years, so I didn't get to work here. But our chief curator did, and she's going to talk for just a moment and tell you what it was like and tell you another reason why this building is so important. Jill Yunkin has been with the Historical Society for 26 years. She always tells me when I'm wrong, so tonight she'll critique everything I said and didn't say. Jill?
Thank you, Joe. And thank you all for coming to this historic occasion. I just want to share a few brief comments about some of the culture and community that this courthouse has fostered over its many, many years of existence. As Joe mentioned, I began my career in history with the Lehigh County Historical Society right here in the Lehigh County Courthouse. You couldn't ask for a better place to work, believe me. We operated out of here exclusively for many, many years until we moved to where our present location now. Our offices were here, our library was here, and we had an exhibit on Lehigh County history on the first floor. Thousands, and I mean thousands, of school children have toured that exhibit here over many years and learned about their local history and about Lehigh County government. Well, working in the courthouse every day was inspirational. The beautiful spiral staircases that you saw when you came up here today, leading to this majestic courtroom, this is where justice was fairly and equally administered on a daily basis. Realizing the American dream, thousands of people came to this courthouse to become U.S. citizens, raising their right hand and reciting the oath of allegiance to the United States of America. This courtroom is a special place for the community as well. This is where they would gather to hear the latest important news, whether it was good news or bad news. Alternately, people packed the courtroom for entertainment, to listen to a well-known lecturer, as we heard Joe talk about Frederick Douglass, or for a variety of other entertainments as well. The Lehigh County Courthouse has always been and continues to be the cornerstone of Lehigh County. Our community grew up and prospered around this courthouse and all that it stands for. I am proud that Lehigh County renovated this significant and long-standing historical structure. They understood the importance and value of preserving our historical heritage for today and for the future. This is a great day to celebrate, a great day to be proud of Lehigh County. Thank you.
Frederick Douglass. He inspired all of America, not only the people in Allentown and the Lehigh Valley. He went to Abraham Lincoln and said, "Why fight with one hand tied behind your back?" Lincoln, on the second inaugural address, called him across the building, across the room, and he said to Douglas, "How was my speech?" By the way, how was mine? And he said, "How was my speech?" And then Douglas said it was a sacred effort. And Lincoln said to him, "No one's opinion is more important to me than yours." That's the power of Frederick Douglass. Born a slave, ultimately becomes one of the greatest heroes of American history. Calling out to us today, walked right down that aisle and stood right here in 1870. And Abraham Lincoln, who would never have I'll be honest with you, one of the questions I get, people will say to me sometimes, I shouldn't say this, but we are friends, I can talk openly. What does Abraham Lincoln have to do with Allentown, right? Or the Lehigh Valley? Without Pennsylvania, Abraham Lincoln never would have been president of the United States. Pennsylvania showed up at the Republican National Convention in Chicago in 1860 with 25% of the votes to win. They gave those votes to Abraham Lincoln. Without that, it would have been William Seward of New York. When Abraham Lincoln called for soldiers to Washington at the beginning of the outbreak of the Civil War, guess who was one of the first, some of the first soldiers to come were the honorary, what we now call the honorary first defenders out of Allentown. They were there 3 days later. And just several days after Lincoln's death, they actually held a funeral, even though there was no body. They held that in Allentown. All the judges were there. All the judges turned out. All the lawyers turned out. All the people turned out and marched down the streets. I always say Allentown, the Lehigh Valley, and Pennsylvania and Lincoln always go well together. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Joe and Jill. That was fantastic. Aren't these great? When we told them that we were going to do this, they said, we want to give you a portrait of Frederick Douglass, because he spoke there and we had a conversation about it. And when I saw the portrait, oh my God, and I showed them a portrait of Lincoln, I said, well, how about we put this with it? And they looked at it and they said, no, we'll get you a better one. The Heritage Museum has given us these. We are going to hang them in the first floor lobby. When you walk in, Douglass will be on the right and Lincoln will be on the left as you go up the stairs. And there will be little plaques under them that will give a little, like in a museum, would give a little blurb on them. So we are thrilled, and thank you so much for being here today. We are now going to move to a video, so there'll be a little activity behind me as Steve sets this up. Now, the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts, who's here with us today, graciously brought its video equipment and here earlier this year and took a video and produced a video, and we're going to see that now. It's about 4 minutes long. And so this will be, this is on their social media. It's been on our website. In fact, they now are taping this program, and that will be put on our website as well. And you can buy copies in the lobby. That's a joke. But we want to especially thank Stacy Witalik and Kim Bathgate for their expert guidance, and Kyle Kaufman, who is there in the back, for making this video. And we want to also thank the entire communications department of AOPC, especially Casey Scheffler, for her help. We all set? Take it away.
The idea was the idea of then President Judge Edward Reedman, who sat in this courtroom. This is what we call courtroom 1A, where we're sitting, and he presided in here for many years, and he loves this building.
President Judge Reedman sent me an article that was in the newspaper in the 1930s that talked about a need to renovate this particular courtroom.
When this courthouse was first constructed in 1814, a lot of changes took place, with not only in the inside but also the exterior as well. So I think that's important for people to realize that if you want to preserve something, there always has to be some changes to it, repairs, updates. And when you look around this courthouse right now, you can just see the magnificence of it.
This project spread across all different individuals, and everyone rallied behind the importance of what it is we are attempting to do, which is create a courthouse that has a function that meets the needs of judiciary while ensuring our historic values are maintained.
When we moved over the two common pleas judges into the main courthouse, the big challenge was now having enough courtrooms for all the functioning judges and space, because we have hearing officers as well as judges, and we used the 2 vacant courtrooms to house them, and they conducted court in those courtrooms.
They did, first of all, a magnificent job. And secondly, they kept the essential historical past of this building, of this structure. You can still see the marble on the walls, which I remember so fondly. I just thought it was beautiful. And all the woodwork, this woodwork is still here, and it's something that you could never replace.
There are old holding cells in the basement of the building, one of the historical features, and in the basement, and they are rounded, sort of archways that used to have bars. The bars aren't there anymore, and they're just used for storage now.
When you're standing outside and you're looking up and down Hamilton Street and you see the face of this building, it's special.
I think that the facade is iconic, and every area has their iconic places. For Philadelphia, it's William Penn statue on top of the City Hall. Lehigh County, I remember for years when I would see a brochure of Lehigh County, that cupola or spire on this building was on there.
Thanks, Steve. Great job. Thank you. You've heard us mention a guy named Judge Reedman. I'm not sure if we mentioned him at all yet, but we're lucky to have him here with us today. This was his idea in the first place, and so we're going to hear from him on a variety of subjects and talk about the history and a little surprise.
President Judge Johnson, I want to especially thank the rendition of the Star Spangled Banner of Miss Drees. It was absolutely beautiful, and the band, the Montreal Municipal Band, it sent chills through my body to hear the music with the presentation of the colors. I was elected to the bench here in 1991, assumed office in... I'm not going to start all over. I was elected to the bench here in 1991, took office in January of 1992. And the way it worked at the time was that courtrooms were assigned on the basis of seniority. And all the judges who were on the bench that had more seniority than me, none of them wanted to come over to this building. This particular courtroom was in deplorable condition. I made no bones about it at the time or over the 30 years that I've been on this bench. It was not air conditioned. The heating system could not be controlled. We had to open the windows in the winter because otherwise it was too hot. This courtroom was known as the gold courtroom, but there was nothing gold about it. It had been painted a yellow as a faux gold and had never been really cleaned or painted in many, many years, so it deteriorated to a mustard yellow color. There were ceiling tiles on the roof that leaked and they were stained. The plasterwork, molding on the side, the roof had leaked on the side, and so plaster had puckered and even the section fallen down. One day I came in the winter into the courtroom, the windows leaked, there was a pile of snow over there in the corner. It was that bad. But I thought this building had potential. And I knew that at some point that the county would step up and would restore it. Never in my dream or my nightmare did I think that it would take the 30 years to get it done. But we're here today and thankful for it. Let me give you just a little bit of history. As you may know, the county was formed out of Northampton County in 1812. The front part of this building was built in 1814. It's the original courthouse for Lehigh County. As the county grew, there was a need in order to expand the courthouse. Now, what intervened between 1814 and when this particular section was built was the Civil War. And let me try to put in context where we are with the history of the Civil War with regard to Allentown and this building. On September the 17th of 1862 was the Battle of Antietam. It was the single bloodiest day of the war. There were 10,300 Confederate casualties, 12,410 Union casualties. On September the 22nd, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, changing the face of the war from just saving the Union to emancipating the slaves. In response, was a call for volunteers. Citizens from Berks, Carbon, and Lehigh County went to Harrisburg from September the 29th to November the 20th and formed what's known as Company H of the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers. The 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers consisted of 13 companies, and Company H consisted of boys from Lehigh County. On December the 10th to the 14th was the Battle of Fredericksburg. It was a bloodbath for the Union. There were 5,580 Confederate casualties, 12,600 Union casualties. At those times, war really was a seasonal event. And after Fredericksburg, the armies pretty much rested because the weather was not conducive for battle. And as the spring thaw came, the armies resumed their activities. On May the 1st to the 5th was the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia. 13,000 Confederate casualties, 17,000 Union casualties. President General Robert E. Lee of the Army of Northern Virginia realized that he was winning battles but losing the war. His army could not sustain these victories that he was having. Although morale in his army was sky high, and morale in the Union Army was bad, and the generals were bad, and Lincoln was not satisfied with the results, Lee knew that he could not sustain those losses. The Army of Northern Virginia couldn't replace soldiers because it didn't have the population base the way the North could replace soldiers. The South didn't have the industrial base the way the North did. And so the Southern armies couldn't be resupplied with iron and ammunition the way the Northern armies would. In the eastern sector of the war, the farmlands of Virginia had been all torn up from the various battles, and also because the Union's fighting was in Virginia, and the Union Army foraged the farms there for their food, for themselves, and also for their animals. Lee understood this. Lee also understood that the war was unpopular at that point in the North. The Democrat Copperheads were opposed to the war. They wanted peace. Citizens were tired of the war. They were having difficulty getting enlistments because of disease and also combat deaths. And so Lee understood that something dramatic had to happen in order for the South to be able to gain its independence. Remember, that's all the South wanted, was its independence. It didn't want to conquer the North. England was on the sidelines, and Lee and President Jefferson Davis hoped that England would recognize the Southern states as a free and independent nation. But England held its cards close to its vest and wanted to see that the South would in fact win the war. So Lee felt he had to do something dramatic, so he moved his army north. And he comes up through the Shenandoah Valley. By mid-June, he's in Pennsylvania. The people in Harrisburg are panicking because Harrisburg was a prime target. If you go to Harrisburg, you'll notice the bridges, railroad bridges across the Susquehanna River. That was the way that the Union supplied the Western armies as General Grant was in Tennessee and also laid siege to Vicksburg in Mississippi. So Lee's idea was to go to Harrisburg, blow up the bridges in Harrisburg, and then turn east and threaten Philadelphia and or Washington. He didn't have a specific game plan. He was going to take it as it came, but he thought that if he invaded Pennsylvania and threatened Philadelphia and Washington, and with the unpopularity of the war, that Lincoln would have to sue for peace. Now let me tell you that here in Lehigh County, the most important newspaper was the Allentown Democrat. It was anti-war, and it fomented a lot of anti-war activity. So part of the thing in Lehigh County was that partly because of its Germanic heritage, there were a lot of citizens who were very suspicious of the central government, the federal government. They weren't crazy about enlisting in the Army. And not only that, the casualty rolls, as I mentioned, from Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, bothered a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't want to go off to war. There was also rampant disease within the Army. The economy here in Lehigh County was surprisingly very good. This was the largest supply of iron east of the Alleghenies. Iron was an important commodity to sustain an army. The farms were very productive and generated an awful lot of goods to feed the army. There were a lot of small businesses that manufactured shoes, clothing, and equipment for the army. There were a lot of army contracts here in Lehigh County. And because of that, the economy was good, jobs were plentiful, wages were high. There weren't a lot of people who were anxious to be supportive of continuing this war, especially with the Allentown Democrat talking about how important it was to get peace. Lee understood this. He knew that that there was a large segment of the North that felt that the war was unpopular. Lee had read the Northern newspapers, and so Lee decided that he would take advantage of all of this by trying to come north and threaten Philadelphia and Washington. Now, let me tell you what happened here in Washington. This is in Allentown. On June the 17th, the day after a Harrisburg newspaper declared the city in a perfect panic because Lee's troops had already crossed the Potomac, there were 62,000 Confederate soldiers in Chambersburg, north of Harrisburg, and west of Harrisburg. To espouse Southern sympathy at this moment would not be popular, which is apparently what Alfred P.I. Roming did. Roming and William Sussman became involved in a political argument in a saloon in Allentown. They moved out to the street to settle the debate with fists when Sussman called for help from the, quote, traitor, rebel, and secessionist, close quote. A mob soon came to his aid. Roming was held and beaten before being rescued by a policeman who took him safely to an upstairs room in a hotel. Hearing the crowd downstairs planning to tar and feather him, Roming escaped through a window, only to be captured again by the enraged mob. Roming must have been relieved to hear that rather than tar and feathers and a ride on a rail, he was to be taken before a local magistrate and made to take an oath to support the Union. After the oath was administered, the crowd lost some of its hostility and consented to release him and be as good friends to him as ever, if he treated all to drinks back at the saloon. The drinks were served and Roming was released, but the good friend relationship did not hold, as legal charges of riot were brought against every one of the mob. At that time, there was also a pending draft. At Harrisburg, people were fleeing with their valuables, and the state records were passed in crates to be evacuated. This was all in fear of Robert E. Lee and his army. So, as we know, June the 30th, 62,000 Confederate troops in Pennsylvania, The Union Army knows where they are. Union Army comes up from the south, which they've been, and they meet at Gettysburg. July 1st was the first day of the battle, generally considered to be a Confederate victory because the Confederates pushed the Federalists, through the town of Harrisburg, but made the mistake of not taking the high ground at Cemetery Ridge. Over that night, the Union Army brings up many of its troops, and they hold up on Cemetery Ridge in a formation that's popularly known as the Fishhook Formation. On the evening of June the 2nd, the early morning of July the 2nd and July the 3rd, the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers are at a place called Culp's Hill, which is the hook end of the so-called fish hook. It's the right flank of the Union Army. Now let me read you what the monument at Gettysburg says on the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers. On the night of July 1st, this regiment, meaning the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers, remember Company H consists of Lehigh County boys, on the northern slope of Little Round Top, holding the extreme left, it should be the extreme right of the Union Army, at 6 p.m. July 2nd, moved to Culp's Hill, where it was held in reserve until evening, then marched toward the left, with the brigade returning at about 3 a.m. July 3rd, and occupied this position. At 5 a.m., the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Ario Pardee, Jr., was ordered to charge and carry the stone wall occupied by the enemy. This they did in handsome style, their firing causing heavy loss to the enemy, who then abandoned the entire line of the stone wall. That's the report of Brigadier General John Geary, who was commanding the 2nd Division of 12th Corps, which was part of the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers. At Gettysburg, it was 20,000 to 400 to 28,000 Confederate casualties against 23,000 Union casualties. Now, I tell you this about the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers because as I've been sitting in this courtroom, and I presided here for 26 years, I think, I wondered about why was it built at the time it was built. My theory is this. After the Confederates were chased away from, or retreated from Gettysburg, there was a sigh of relief from Harrisburg, Chambersburg, Harrisburg, York, Philadelphia, Allentown, that you know something, maybe this Union will be preserved after all. So in the fall of 1863, Lehigh County Commissioners put a call out to put an addition on this courthouse. My belief is that they felt they could do that with some measure of confidence that there will be a Union after all. This particular courtroom was built at that time. It was completed in 1865. So I've had the privilege and the honor of serving as a judge in this county for 30 years. I'm in my 2nd year as a senior judge. And I thought I'd like to give something back to the citizens of this county for giving me that honor and privilege of serving as their judge. And I thought I'd like to do something historical. Parenthetically, I went to Lafayette College. I majored in history. The history department was housed then in a building known as Pardee Hall. Pardee Hall was given to Lafayette College the generosity of Ario Pardee, Jr., who was from Hazleton. So I thought, what could I do that would be appropriate? And I thought of the Battle of Gettysburg, because this particular edition was built right after Gettysburg. And so I'd like to show you what my gift is to the citizens of this county. This is not the original. The original is housed in Harrisburg in the collection of the Pennsylvania Capitol Historical Commission, Preservation Commission. And you can see it. In fact, I went to see it because I did my research to try to figure out, what do I do? What unit do I pick to honor it? There were 2 units at the Battle of Gettysburg that consisted of Lehigh County boys. Company H of the 147th at Fort at Cups Hill was one. The other was the 46th Pennsylvania Regiment Infantry that consisted of Lehigh and Northampton County boys. However, it did not see any action at Gettysburg. It was held in reserve. And I thought the unit that saw action and gave blood is the unit that ought to be honored. So I got assistance from Michael Diaz, who's a curator at the United States Military Museum at West Point, from Jason Wilson, who runs the Capitol Preservation Committee in Harrisburg, and we focused on the 147th. That is the exact size, and that is the exact appearance of the 147th battle flag that's housed in Harrisburg. It was, I commissioned it with the DuPage Military Flag Company in Gaithersburg, Maryland. It's a hand-painted field, which is the way the flags were done in the 1860s. The original flag was manufactured by Horstman and Company, which was a very well-known flag company at the time. And this flag, I sat with County Executive Phil Armstrong and Rick Mulchaney, the Director of General Services, and we came to an agreement that I would take care of the flag and the county would take care of the framing. Now, let me just take another minute and tell you about the framing. This flag project was 3 years in the making. The renovation of this courthouse, for me, was 30 years in the making. I can be very patient. There's a problem with the framing, and that's why it's not framed today. We've selected the frame. We know how it's supposed to be prepared, but we're trying to find the glazing for it that works. And I won't bore you with the details, but it's very difficult to find a piece of glazing that is one piece that will fit this, that will meet the properties that we need. We need to have it UV resistant, we need to have it non-glare, and we need to have it pass code and have a security aspect to it so that it's not just simple glass that can be broken in a courtroom by some errant litigant. So we're searching for this solution, and out of desperation, it came to me that, how about the Corning Glass Company of New York? So I sent a letter to the CEO at Corning, not that I know him, but I learned who his name was. I sent a letter. I got a call from his chief of staff, and so the Corning Company is now working to try to find a solution that we can get this thing glazed in a way that would be fitting for this flag. It'll be framed and hung over the jury box in this courtroom. Now, I give it to this for a lot of reasons. First, in honor of the boys from Lehigh County who were in Company H of the 147th Pennsylvania Volunteers. But this is just a vehicle by which to honor every person who has served in public office, who has been a first responder, who has been a school teacher, who has been a sheriff, county executives, county commissioners, county employees, all municipal, state government people who work in public service to make our country and our community better. And so I thought that this was my way of thanking the citizens as well as acknowledging the sacrifices and service that every public servant makes every single day. Thank you.
Now, you heard Joe talk about how Frederick Douglass, when he spoke, all the judges were here, and then you heard Judge Reedman give a very nice history lesson. Just to be clear, he wasn't here then. He knew enough to be here, but he actually wasn't here then. Now, that's the history section, and the next session will be a little briefer. And we want to thank some people. I want to thank, on behalf of the court and all the judicial employees, the county executive, Phillips Armstrong, and the Board of Commissioners for making these renovations happen. The successful completion of this project is due to the commitment of the executive, and I've asked them to come up, and the Board of Commissioners, and the hard work of many people and organizations. Special thanks goes to Director of General Services, Rick Mulchaney. He worked closely with the court and also with District Court Administrator Carrie Terzo, Building Superintendent Brian Hartner, and Rick Mulchaney was really the driving force behind this entire project. He worked tirelessly to make this project a success, and I think you can agree with me, it has resulted in a restoration that maintained the architectural history while modernizing internal systems. And Executive Armstrong understands the importance of the court. He's been extremely supportive of the work of the court, and he's a smart, caring leader for Lehigh County, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know him professionally and personally and developed a good professional and personal relationship with him, and I'm pleased to ask him to say a few words here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Has the band, the flag, the whole bit. And on the way in, the sheriff grabbed me and he said, "Whatever you do, don't start with the lawyer joke." I think the word tar and feather would be, yes. And by the way, speaking of what he spoke about the Chinese, they were the first group of people in American history that were actually banned from coming to America, the Chinese Exclusion Act. So he was absolutely correct. But what I want to talk to you just a little bit about, not history, but the word totem. Totem, I know people think of totem pole and our Native Americans, but totem means when you see a symbol, that symbol reminds you of a group of people. The Jewish star, the cross, you see these, you think of a group of people. This building is Lehigh County's totem. This is the symbol that has been here for hundreds of years that represents what the people stood for in Lehigh County. Justice, making sure it was fair for everyone. It has been such an honor the last couple of years to work with the greatest teams in the world, with Rick Mulchaney, with the judges, First Judge Reedman, then our new President Judge Johnson, in getting this to work. When you ever watch that TV show, This Old House, and they take apart a wall, and they go, oh, well, we took apart walls, we took apart ceilings, and we found things that, oh my gosh. And just like if you're at your home repair, when you start something, you have this figure in mind, and when you end, it might be a different figure. But I'll tell you what, the Lehigh County Board of Commissioners, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch, one thing I think is very, very important today. We planned for this. This was a well-planned out project. This wasn't something we came to the people of Lehigh County and said, okay, we're going to up your taxes 300%. We planned. It was done right, and it's going to be here. Hopefully, someday, we'll have Judge Reedman's picture up there, okay? But it was done right, and I think that's important. It was important because I will leave you with this. In Lehigh County, government is working. It gets things done. And it gets things done because we work together. God bless Lehigh County. God bless this as a totem that stands for Lehigh County. And thank you all for coming today.
And likewise to the executive, Lehigh County Board of Commissioners Chairman, Jeff Brace, has provided smart, balanced leadership, critical thinking. We've worked closely with each other, and again, I think we've created a nice relationship among the three of us, and I'm thrilled to have him here and ask him to say a few words.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. It was remarkable walking up the stairs and coming through the courtroom doors. I have two memories as a child in this building, both about the same age as my son who's here. Isaac is 10 years old and now slinking down further and further in his bench, sitting next to his mother. The first memory was, I believe, in this courtroom where Judge Gardner, when I was 11, entertained a group of kids who were doing a summer week in the city, getting to know the places that make Lehigh County and the city of Allentown work and noteworthy. And so he sat with about 20, 25 of us and gave us an overview of what happens in a courtroom such as this. The other memory is my mom was a secretary at a church at 6th and Walnut Street, St. John's UCC. Lunchtime, we would take walks to the post office, and she would, in order to entertain me during the summer months, stop at noteworthy places to introduce me to what was around here. One of those stops was the museum downstairs. And I think she may have had to drag me out of that place when I was about 11 or 12 years old because I was just so enamored by the history. And this building helped to capture and reinforce that. I do want to acknowledge a couple of my colleagues who are here today. I saw Dan Hartzell. I know Jeff Dutt is here, Bob Elbick. I think that captures the Board of Commissioners that are here. I know David Jones is also here, and Antonio Pineda is in the back waving at me. I mention these individuals because when I took office in 2014, Judge Riebman sold us on the vision of this building and its rehabilitation. And I know the board at that time said, we're all in. And each of the individuals that I've mentioned have had a role in that process. I know Dan McCarthy is here also. Helped to reinforce the need for this restoration. Old buildings and their renovations never go as planned. I own a house that was constructed somewhere between 1865 and 1885, and my wife and I are constantly doing work on that house. And when we open up a wall, we go, what the? And, continue our conversation and figure out what we're going to do as a result of that. The costs, the work, everything that goes into it. But this building, I think more than anything, represents as part of our understanding that liberty and justice for all is the reason government exists. That the reason that we come and we work in government offices and the reason people come into these courtrooms is to manifest liberty and justice for all. And this courthouse symbolizes our historic commitment to liberty and justice for all. When people come down Hamilton Street, yes, we've got the large courthouse here, we've got a federal courthouse across the street. Liberty and justice for all is part of the American experience. And in renovating this building to the standards that we enjoy while we stand here and sit here, is a recommitment to those values. I want to thank first the taxpayers of Lehigh County who entrusted us with the responsibilities to plan this facility and to make the work such that we can be proud of it. I think we also need to thank the court employees and the judges, the court administration leadership, the attorneys, who have been patient as we work through the process of renovating this facility and juggle everything across the street to make this day possible. I'm here with my son, but I saw a couple of other kids that are here. I think what's cool about this gathering today is that they're going to walk away bored to tears. That's not the cool part. But in 20 years, they're going to walk past this building for some reason. Maybe they're going to a court appointment themselves. Maybe they're going to get a marriage license squared away. And they're going to see this building and the history it represents as being truly worthy of our investment. We made that investment happen through 2023. But that commitment will live on far beyond any of us in this room and be carried on by our kids. So thank you. It's truly great to be here today. And I look forward to the many other investments that we can make so the taxpayers of Lehigh County can be proud of what we have. Thank you.
And finally, we want to thank the people who did the very difficult work of designing and executing the renovation of this building. They did an incredible job, don't you think, of marrying the old with the new. And they are Artifact Inc., the architectural studio, Benesch, Strunk Albert Engineering, Skanska USA, SA Communal, Albarell Electric, JBM Mechanical, the Warco Group, Wilmer R. Schwartz Inc., and Lehigh County itself. Christine Usler is here with us. She's the founder and president of Artifact Inc., the architectural firm that designed this renovation. And I'd like to ask her to come up and say a few words, and I think you have an announcement.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here and to have worked on this courthouse. I'll give you another little history lesson. I'm sorry. But this facility is very interesting how each piece of the courthouse, it's related to a war, which is how I remember the dates. So 1812, the war. The initial building, federal style, built in 1814. Civil War, directly after, we have the 1865 courtroom and this addition, which is Italianate. And we have a small addition, which is the lovely original court or law library in 1898. And then World War I, right before that, 1914, Lehigh County did the majestic addition that you see to the north in the Beaux-Arts style. And interestingly, there were plans. They planned to tear everything down after they built the 1914. The plan was to remove everything else and build a matching building to the building that you see that's the 1914 courtroom, all in the Beaux-Arts style. That never happened. The war intervened, and we sort of saved a story here that's kind of an architectural history storybook. And that's how I think about this building. It's a great honor to work on this building. I want to thank the entire team, my office, Cassie Rogue in particular, project architect, all of the contractors, and in particular Lehigh County, and the vision of Judge Riedman, and the dedication of Rick Mulchaney to actually get this done, and everybody at Lehigh County. So yesterday, the renovation was honored with an award from Preservation Pennsylvania, and we went out to receive the award, and I would like to give this to the county, the recognition of the renovation of the courthouse by the state. So thank you.
I designed not one part of this, but I'll take it. Okay, one last thing, and we'll hear another musical piece before we end and have a little reception. I always noticed that in all the courtrooms, some had seals, some didn't, some had different signs of seals, and I always thought, we should really have our own seal, shouldn't we, to mark our identity? And so I had an idea, and I talked to Rochelle Watring, who I'm going to ask to come up here with me. And and talked to her about it, and she's very talented in this area, and so she worked for hours and hours, and she told me, for hours on the computer part of this and every little detail, because when you give it to a fabricator, you have to have every detail worked out, right? And every time I'd call, how you doing? I'm still working on the piece. And so she did that, and finally then had it where we thought we wanted it, and then had Brianna Cease, who works with us as well, add a few little things to it, and then we commissioned Art Sign Works, who's a company in the country, actually in California, to fabricate it. And so this is a nod to the history and to this building. This will hang in every courtroom. And a final piece from the Allentown Band. So much. Another hand for them. And for our presenters, thank you. We learned a lot. And our partners in the government, thank you so much. So you want me having notes, or else I'll talk forever. So we hope you've enjoyed this dedication ceremony, and we thank you for coming. We know that it's not easy, and people have traveled. We want to also especially thank some people for helping us put this on. We want to thank especially Sheriff Joe Hanna. Where is he? Joe? Show yourself. We were going to lower him from the ceiling, but that didn't work out. But for providing security for this event, and for Brian Hartner and his crew for working hard and sprucing up the place for today. Please join us for a light reception immediately following adjournment. We'll have food and beverages set up in the hall in the back, and then you can mingle in here and in there, and then you can see the courtroom 1B behind, which Christine talked about. That's a totally different design from this, and to get there you can walk through here. You saw us walking through. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming today. We really appreciate it.